Welcome to This Explainer. Look, whether you're an industry professional, an academic, or a policymaker, I'm willing to bet you're feeling the friction of our current economic systems. It's pretty palpable right now. So today, we're setting out to systematically break down the transition from linear to circular business models. We're going to dig into the data, unpack the structural barriers, and look at the exact mechanisms we need to completely redesign the bottom line. Let's get into it.
Here is a huge fundamental question that sits at the very heart of our global economy. Why on earth does making something entirely new actually cost less than fixing something old? It's this massive, systemic economic paradox, and it's exactly what we're going to deconstruct today. Well, it boils down to this. Our current economic policies inherently favor mass-market linear sales. In a linear economy, businesses are basically rewarded for high volume. They benefit from drastically low taxes on resource extraction and pollution. But on the flip side, the circular economy is heavily penalized. Because circular models like repair and resale rely so much on human effort, they get hit with incredibly high labor taxes. And resale businesses, they often face taxes at every single transaction, not just at the original point of sale. It's an uphill battle, for sure.
To fix this, we need a roadmap. We'll start with the linear economy trap, define what shifting to circular models actually looks like, explore resilience and capital allocation, outline 3 targeted policy levers, and finally, model the economic impact. All right, part 1, the linear economy trap and why current markets favor mass production. Let's take the fashion industry as a prime example here. Fashion businesses are navigating markets that were quite literally built from the ground up for a linear economic. The incentives are entirely skewed. Companies are structurally encouraged to extract virgin resources, make brand new items from scratch, and constantly shift production to lower-wage labor markets. It's an environment that is optimized for one thing, and one thing only, pure volume.
And get this striking statistic. There is a 34.9% average tax wedge on labor for employed workers in OECD countries. 34.9%. Now, compare that to taxes on pollution and resource extraction, which make up a mere 0.9% of total tax revenues. That massive gap proves exactly why capital flows so effortlessly toward resource-intensive business models and away from labor-intensive ones.
So this leads us to a crucial concept, the linear penalty. Think about it. In mass manufacturing, making 1 million shirts makes each individual shirt cheaper. But in the circular economy, sorting, cleaning, and repairing 100 vintage jackets takes 100 times the effort of doing just one. Because of this extreme operational variability, circular models simply cannot reap the rapid scale benefits that linear incumbents enjoy. They're structurally trapped.
Moving right along to part 2, shifting to circular models, defining resale and repair. Now, despite these systemic barriers, post-consumer resale models, whether that's managed marketplaces, brand-led re-commerce, or peer-to-peer platforms, are actually successfully generating new revenue streams. And honestly, even more importantly, they are creating valuable local job opportunities by capturing value from stuff that already exists.
Formally speaking, we define resale and repair as mechanisms for extending product lifespans. The ultimate goal here is decoupling revenue from virgin resource extraction. By keeping products in use for way longer, these models deliver substantially better environmental outcomes. They reduce the demand for primary production and take a ton of pressure off of our public waste management systems.
The catch, though, is that repair is inherently local and highly labor-intensive. I mean, you can't exactly offshore fixing a tear in a local customer's winter jacket, right? Because of that, the competitiveness of these businesses is incredibly sensitive to domestic fiscal policy and tax design. They desperately need a level playing field to actually thrive.
Which brings us to part 3, resilience and capital allocation, the economic rationale for the shift. Why does this shift make sense on a macro level? Well, the linear model is becoming increasingly risky. We're seeing volatile commodity markets and wild geopolitical supply chain shocks. But by decoupling from raw materials, circular models shield businesses from those sudden input cost spikes, which fundamentally improves long-term business resilience. Plus, because investors appraise returns post-tax, adjusting our fiscal policies can actively shift capital allocation right toward these domestically anchored, highly resilient activities.
Okay, part 4, 3 targeted policy levers, or how we actually change these structural incentives.
Based on some pretty extensive modeling across Canada, the EU, and the US, correcting this market imbalance requires 3 specific sequential policy levers. First up, improve unit margins by reducing or totally eliminating VAT or sales taxes on used goods. Second, reduce the heavy burden of labor costs by lowering labor taxes. And third, apply ambitious EPR, or extended producer responsibility fees, to linear production. Essentially, you make producers pay for the true costs of their linear output.
This creates a crystal clear juxtaposition. On one hand, we have linear mass production. On the other, skilled local repair. These policy instruments are already completely within the government's control. By putting them into action, we penalize the resource-heavy linear models while simultaneously lowering the barrier to entry for domestic, service-based circular work. It completely rewrites the rulebook.
Finally, Part 5, the economic impact, modeling the new bottom line.
The sheer scale of the potential impact here is massive. Data modeling from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation shows that with this targeted policy mix in place, gross profit margins absolutely skyrocket. For mass market resale, margins can jump to an impressive 55%. And for repair models, they reach around 41%. This is exactly the kind of commercial viability that is absolutely necessary if we want to scale circular businesses to become the industry norm.
The big question now is how industry leaders will navigate this new reality. Under this modeled policy mix, businesses face a strategic choice. They can choose to retain these cost savings to drastically improve their own profit margins, making them instantly more competitive against those linear incumbents. Or they can choose to pass those savings directly onto the consumer through lower prices.
And here's where it gets really interesting. If businesses choose to pass those cost benefits to consumers, growth accelerates dramatically. The modeling suggests that resale could capture up to 14% of the mass market clothing sector in the US and Canada. That directly displaces linear sales, drives up volume, and massively extends the useful life of products on a societal scale. All of this perfectly summarizes the core thesis we've unpacked today. We cannot build circular business models on a linear economic foundation. It's like building a house on sand. Voluntary business action has simply reached its limit. Without bold government leadership stepping up to adjust tax structures and establish a genuinely fair market environment, the circular economy is just going to remain trapped by these systemic barriers. Which leaves us with a critical thought to end on. The framework we've explored today extends far beyond just fashion or textiles. As the shift from linear to circular models becomes an absolute economic imperative, the very rules of profitability are changing. So how will your sector adapt to the new bottom line? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the status quo, and I'll catch you next time.